then chapter 2, part 3 of Becoming Sister Wives. This is Janelle and Cody's chapter in the matrimony. This is from the point of view of Cody. After Janelle's experiment with the teepee, she visited regularly. Mary and I were living in Montana, and Janelle sometimes stayed over at our place. One evening, after the three of us had spent the day together, just as we were getting ready for bed, Janelle made an unusual request. "Mary," she said, "can I have a moment alone with Cody so that I can talk to him about something important?" I suspected what was coming, but Janelle was going about it strangely. She was still in her Cowboys and Indians phase. That night, she was dressed like a cowgirl in jeans and khaki corduroy shirt, her hair pulled into a high ponytail. At the time, Mary and I were living in a cabin with a giant living room and two small, unpleasant bedrooms. Mary went to bed, leaving me and Janelle sitting on the junky furniture I'd picked up at a yard sale. Janelle was forthcoming. "I think I belong in your family," she said. I was flattered and pleased, not to mention relieved. Months earlier, I had told Mary about my interest in a relationship with Janelle, but it was more of an impromptu suggestion than a serious proposal. So it felt proper that Janelle should make the official opening move. In many ways, it's more appropriate. After all, I was a married man. I should not be making moves on women. That would defile my relationship with Mary. Quite often in our faith, it's the woman who approaches the family she's interested in. I think people are surprised by how often the woman makes the opening move. If a woman finds a family to which she feels spiritually connected, typically she builds a relationship with the first wife or wives, then she will tell her father, who then speaks to the father of the husband in the family. Now, Janelle didn't exactly play by the rules, but since my father had been involved in trying to find her a husband, it seemed appropriate enough. Ever since Mary and I got engaged, we had affirmed our commitment to the principle of plural marriage. There were many couples who are polygamous in belief but live monogamously. In other words, while they believe the principle, they don't live the principle and never take other wives into their families. Mary and I did not want to be one of those couples. We both felt that we had been called to open our family to additional wives. We'd been married for 3 years and had 3 wonderful years of monogamy. If Mary had misgivings about Janelle, she didn't voice them to me. She seemed happy enough to welcome Janelle into our home. Back then, we were still very young and didn't have the wisdom or the vocabulary to talk about our deepest emotions. So if something was troubling her, I fear she would have been unable to express it in a way I understood. Mary and I moved back to Wyoming to get ready to bring Janelle into our family. We had to find a house that was big enough for all of us. Janelle and I were officially courting, but things were moving quickly. For various reasons, courtships for second and third wives are traditionally quite short. The most important of these is that it's neither appropriate for a married man to be spending excessive time with a woman who is not his wife, nor is it fair to the other wives to sit at home during a long courtship. Even in comparison to most plural courtships, Janelle's and mine was particularly short. We managed to go on only one date. And it wasn't much of a date. It took place sometimes after New Year's, and it was freezing cold. I had been working a 15-hour shift, so when I finally got off work, it was late. The town where Mary and I were living in Wyoming was really small. By the time I picked Janelle up, all the restaurants were closed, so we drove around in the dark. Janelle's mother had given me a ring that had been hers. I put the ring on Janelle's finger and asked her to marry me. It was more of a formality than an actual proposal. It was dark, it was late, and it was cold. 2 weeks later, we got married. We had a spiritual ceremony on another bitterly cold January night. Then we went on our honeymoon. We had no plan. We just drove and drove, staying wherever we felt like stopping. Now it's from the point of view of Janelle again. Except for that brief car ride during which Cody proposed until our honeymoon, the only time we'd been alone was when we went out to retrieve something from the cow pen on the ranch. Although I was looking forward to finally having the freedom to be alone together, it was awkward at first. Our courtship had been chaste. We'd only shared one kiss, and it was a very innocent one. When a man is married, it's extremely inappropriate to have any physical intimacy during a courtship. Robin. During the first few days of our honeymoon, it was difficult for me to consider our relationship as a married couple. Even though we'd had the spiritual ceremony, which committed us to each other in a newer, deeper way, I felt no closer to Cody than I had a week earlier. We had been friends, but now we had to learn to be husband and wife. I now know that Cody and I weren't in love then, but there wasn't a moment that I didn't believe that I'd made the right decision. Not just about Cody, but about my new faith. When I announced my intention to convert from LDS to fundamentalism, I was challenged by many members of my family. They believed I was not just making a mistake, but committing a sin. Nevertheless, I never once wavered in my decision to accept the beliefs of my new religion. In marrying Cody, I alienated my maternal grandparents and my paternal grandmother. My sister, too, initially rebuffed me. Although it was hard for me to come to terms with my estrangement from certain members of my family, I imagined that I'd have sister wives who would, at least in part, compensate for that loss. I'm sure all of this was on my mind during my honeymoon, so I felt pressure for my marriage to succeed right from the start. However, I had no idea how to go about this. Cody and I had a deep friendship, and we were completely compatible on an intellectual level. We were committed to the decision we'd made. Now we had to find a way to make it work. By the end of the honeymoon, we had arrived at a point where we felt safer with each other, but it would be many, many years into our marriage before our true love story would begin. I didn't know when I married Cody what a struggle the first year would be. I moved into a house with him and Mary and lived in their guest room. I felt like a long-term visitor, an eternal house guest instead of a wife. Mary and Cody were still very much in love, and they had no idea how to incorporate me into their lives. I had no idea where I fit into the marriage. When we watched movies, they would sit on the couch and hold hands under a blanket, and I'd sit in my own chair. I didn't feel as I had my own place in the house. Arguments would erupt over the smallest things, the right way to fold clothes, the right way to clean the kitchen. I felt challenged and confronted on all fronts. I lost my sense of self. I would have to learn to speak up for myself and establish my own life and status within our household. It wasn't until Cody married for the third time that things would begin to settle down in our household. And that is the end of Janelle's chapter. Tomorrow we'll do Christine and Cody's matrimony, and then we'll go to Robin and Cody's, and then we'll, so. Good night, bitches.